Hello and welcome to Hooting Mandrills. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Sam.
And today we're going to be looking at Secrets of Strixhaven, just the regular set. Let's just jump right in, I guess.
There's a cycle of mythic elder dragons, and they are elder dragons, so they are designed first and foremost with commander in mind. That's where the ED and EDH comes from. But I think these are all somewhat playable. I think the one that speaks most to us because of who we are as people is Witherbloom the Balancer. 6 black and a green, is a 5/5 flying death touch, but he has affinity for creatures, so if you're going wide, he's pretty cheap. Also, instants and sorcery spells you cast have affinity for creatures, so if you somehow can play this cheap and have other mana to keep doing stuff, you can potentially do a lot with this guy.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some sort of Chatterstorm thing to be done in Historic with this.
In Modern or Commander, it does go infinite with Sprout Swarm is, I think, the card. The card's not on Arena, but will be eventually because it's such a commander staple. Yeah. It's the convoke, buyback, make a saproling. So you just convoke one out, you just tap this guy for green, basically, or any other guy for green to convoke out a saproling, and you still just pay the buyback because your affinity for creatures covers it, and then you just keep tapping the new saproling to convoke it out, and you have infinity tap saprolings, and hopefully that wins you the game somehow.
And there should be a way to deal that, yeah.
In Standard, there's Sorceresses schemes, which, incidentally, you can Scryfall search SSSS, and it will come up. Just a little bit of reg excellence on their part. Someone will get that. So if you have the ability to produce a red mana with this guy and at least 3 other creatures out, and a Sorceresses schemes either in your graveyard or in exile, and 1 in your hand, or 2 in your graveyard with, I guess you need 5 creatures counting this guy, and 2 across your hand, graveyard, and exile. You Sorceresses schemes for Sorceresses schemes, and you can just keep looping them because they give you a red back each time. You also can get a little bit of extra steps in this loop because they both have flashback, so you can basically pull back all of the instants and sorceries in your graveyard and flashback ones in exile into your hand and build up Infinite Storm. I don't know how that wins, but it works. This might be all a little cute. You might also just be able to, get a bunch of creatures in play in your creature-y deck, get a big 5/5, and get to fire off a big outrageous robbery for relatively cheap.
It might be better with Song of Totentanz.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that you certainly can do. It both sets up and pays out your dragon.
Yeah, I think you definitely with this card want to be in some kind of space where you're mostly making creatures with spells. Obviously, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, in Pioneer, Awaken the Woods is another one that's pretty good with this on both sides.
It's on the Mystical Archives reprinted. You might be able to do that
in Draft, yeah. That'd be fun.
I think they're both at Mythic for limited purposes, so
some lucky motherfucker in there sealed gets both of these things and is crushing. Yeah, no, they're not extremely likely to happen, but yeah, pretty cool. I mean, there's plenty of stuff.
Pioneer wise, this beans.
Yeah, always.
Literally anything that discounts itself from a mana value of 5 or greater, you start thinking about up the beanstalk.
Only in Pioneer, the format where it's legal, but I guess it's still legal in Historic, right? But
yeah, it is. And there are some go wide enablers that are there in Historic and Modern that aren't there in Pioneer. So you could think about a card like this there.
Yeah, sir. I mean, Chatterstorm, what I talked about earlier.
Yes, Chatterstorm is a pretty significant one. There are things and stuff that you can do with this card. It's cool.
I guess the 2 that I like best next are Lorehold, the Historian, for
Lorehold.
Oh, Lorehold, my bad. For 3 in Boros, 5/5, Elder Dragon, Flying Haste. Each instant and sorcery card in your hand has Miracle 2. You can cast a card for its Miracle cost when you draw it if it is the first card you drew this turn, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. So you can kind of keep the Miracle stuff going on your opponent's turns. I mean, the Miracle stuff is obviously really cool. You can set it up pretty easily in older formats. In Standard, top manipulation a little bit harder, but they just put infinite top manipulation in Historic over and over again, so that should be fine.
Yeah, you can get away with a 5/5. It's a 5/5 flying haste for
right.
5.
At least it has
haste.
Big,
yeah.
He's
pretty big and pretty mean.
At least it does does something too.
You know,
yeah.
if we're talking about historic, all of these cards get discounted by my boy Fearsome Whelp, so, you know, it's not outside of the realm of possibility they could be playable.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, I don't know, Fearsome Whelp plus the Mox, you're, you know, kind of flying. You can get pretty fast starts. I mean, Momo also discounts red-white, so if you're looking to really cheat this guy out quickly, there's stuff.
When I try to build dragon decks in historic, keep feeling I'm pulled in multiple directions, where on the one hand I want to play all this like mana acceleration, want to play the Mox alongside Fearsome Whelp and all this, and on the other side I kind of just want to shove Clarion Conqueror and, you know, make the Psychic Frog player deal with it.
Fair enough.
The Psychic Frog and all the mana dorks in Green Devotion, though, like, how much does that really slow them down? You know, the Eldrazi players who are still around with their spawns.
I mean, if Clarion Conqueror on
Like
2 is good enough, then
Clarion Conqueror, Stompy,
in many ways the Mox is inadequate.
if that is going all the way into being sort of a birthing ritual pile, you probably aren't drawing instants and sorceries reliably enough to care
you
about
can't do
miracling
both
them.
those things, probably.
Yeah, this card is cool.
Is Dragon Typhoon an instant or sorcery, or is it an enchantment?
It's an enchantment, unfortunately. In Standard, there is, like, one of the modes of Insatiable Avarice is top deck manipulation, right? Or is essentially a bad Vampiric Tutor that puts something on top. So that's, like, barely getting the discount of miracling it. But maybe you just, like, spin the wheel and hope for the best in a deck with lots of instants and sorceries.
But how expensive can your instants and sorceries be if you expect to live? And, like, you don't really want to board wipe after you've, like, most expensive instants and sorceries that are good are board wipes. I mean, there's other stuff.
I mean, you might play, like, a small board wipe, like
Ill-timed Explosion or something.
and Jeskai, or Standard doesn't really have a 3-mana one that's very good in
and like
red
the other
or in
thing
white
about in
that works
Jeskai
with
is that
this.
you're trying to play like Go Ninja Go Shiko stuff already, so like you want your instants and sorceries to cost 3 or less, so it's a tough thing.
You do just get a lot of looks. As long as this thing stays alive, you get to rummage at the start of each opponent's upkeep to get either another look at a miracle or just a fix your hand a little bit. And that does mean that the floor of this thing, just as a fair card, 5/5 flying haste, if they are tapped out, they're getting hit and you get to rummage. By the time they have priority to remove this thing, you get to rummage. You know, Fable was really good in Standard, and, you know, just a board presence that also fixes your hand a bit is not the end of the world on its own.
Yeah, I think Fable right now would kind of struggle, because like why Fable is able to hang out in Pioneer is kind of like the Thoughtseize Fatal Push around it that like lets you play a 3-drop on turn 3. It does so much, but like, you know, it only makes a 2/2 when you play it.
I mean, I agree. This Standard is not, you know, the last Standard that I really enjoyed, where I could look at a hand with 3 lands and a Fable and very little else going on the play and say that that was maybe a reasonable keep.
Yeah, Standard is a different place now, but it's a cool card. I think it's difficult to make it work and like to build a deck around it. I think it's better in older formats than Standard, realistically, but maybe somebody will figure something out. Like I said, it momos, it does the thing, but all those decks are sort of more creature focused, so like mixing creatures and spells is sort of a difficult ask. All right, let's talk about Quandrix the Proof for 4 and Simic. It's once again a legendary Elder Dragon, 6/6. Flying Trample, Cascade. Instant and sorcery spells you cast from your hand have Cascade. So more control finisher type stuff. It's really good, but like...
It's a little awkward in control decks because Cascade's bad with counter spells.
Yeah, so you can't really be doing that. Yeah, it's not like a control finisher like that, but...
As like big Cascade creatures go, this is not a bad one.
It's 6, yeah. I don't know.
Like, Commander players have played Emoti for a long time, and that's just a 5-mana 3/1, I think, with Cascade. Like, this is better than that.
Yeah,
like, you know,
a lot better.
Emoti might be legal in Standard for all I know right now. I don't remember whether that was a Foundations card or if it was like a bonus sheet for March the Machines or something. It could have been either, it could have been both. I literally couldn't tell you. But if you get to 6, casting this thing is probably getting you 6 mana worth of value in a like sort of cub-ish deck. The only thing that cascades in your cub deck is Rhythm, probably, which is awkward. So this thing is blue, so in Historic it casts off Aquatic Subtlety, still cascades as a 6-drop when it does so, and if you have the mana up to cast a scam spell for it, that scam spell will always cascade as a 1, so you could maybe build a deck in such a way. One of the Aquatic Subtlety builds that I tried didn't really pan out was trying to be like a Dragon's Beans type of deck, and like if you're like 1 mana spell of any sort that cascades into, you know, a copy or 2 of Rhinos that you have in your deck, that might be okay. It might be too many pieces, might be a little cooked, but...
Could you Living End? Maybe that deck is harder to build.
Unfortunately, Cascade happens with this thing on the stack. Maybe you could Living End, because...
This thing, so it isn't in play. If it cascades into an instant itself, it isn't in play yet, so you don't get to cascade
It
that.
would have to cascade into Living End, and it would have a chance of missing by hitting at least the Aquatic Subtleties, or like anything
in your deck,
5 or less.
It seems like
and
a
then,
tough proposition.
Once it's in play, it needs to be in play, even if it is dying to evoke, to have the Cascade ability to
On instant
Living End with it.
yeah.
There's no way to get this into your graveyard to make the Cascade work for Living End. There's no way to reorder the stack and make that work.
Even if you like Deadly Dispute it, which wouldn't be good, but like...
I don't actually know how
do
it
those rules
works.
judge?
That was another thing that I was thinking about when they first revealed this card a couple weeks ago, is does a spell that sacrifices this thing as an additional cost, a Deadly Dispute, Village Rites effect, cascade? I think the answer is yes. I never got around to asking a judge about it.
So there's that. That seems pretty fringe. All right, let's look at the other two. Prismari, the inspiration, is 5 and blue-red, 7/7, Elder Dragon, legend. Flying, ward, pay 5 life, instant and sorcery spells you cast have storm. This is like, once again, it's like, that's great, but like, after I've already built up 7 mana.
Yeah. Again, this one is blue, so it does cast off subtlety. Maybe you can like subtlety into like evoke this thing and storm off with the evoke trigger on the stack. Seems hard, but maybe doable. The other is it mythic, Giant Idiot, the Bards, I think is also plausible. Zaffai and the Tempests. 7 mana, 5/7. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. This is another sort of like weird Aquatic Subtlety or some other cheated out, like maybe you can get this Omniscience effect to be good, but I think both of these are just commandery and kind of bad.
Yeah, it's just expensive nonsense.
Last Elder Dragon is Silverquill the Disputant. He is a 4 mana. He is the cheapest and therefore the best of the Elder Dragons. Now,
Witherbloom is the cheapest.
That's true. But he's a 4 mana, 4/4 flying vigilance and Orzhov, and each instant and sorcery spell you cast has casualty 1. So casualty is not as old a keyword as some of these other ones, but is old enough that the set it's from rotated out of standard. There is also reminder text. As you cast a spell, you can sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater, and if you do, you copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. This is
pretty powerful.
Okay, right? Yeah, like
in a Sephiroth deck or something, like 1 4-drop and a 2 of 4-drop, you can just like turn all of your kill spells into this. It is kind of funny, actually, even with your Raise the Past nonsense, where you just re-sacrifice everything again in the middle, as long as you've got a sack outlet. And so like even like casualtying your Raise the Past, kind of silly, you know?
You can also, there's also the new sort of variant Raise the Past, Fix What's Broken, where you pay life and get a mana value. I guess copying that isn't super helpful because you don't get to get 2 mana values. You get the same life total copied, so maybe that's not great. This thing does come out of Beseech the Mirror and can potentially copy a Beseech the Mirror.
Ooh, that's fun too, yeah.
Any sort of combo, if you have this in play and if it is just a good enough card at its baseline to, you know, and you untap with it and you Beseech and with with Bargain and also sack a 1-power creature, you do get double Bargained Beseech. So if there's a combo of 2 4-mana cards in your deck that wins the game, you win the game. I don't really know of something like that in Standard right now. Although, you know, I feel like every set where, like, yeah, if you resolve 4-drop into 4-drop, which is kind of what resolving this into Beseech also is, but at least the cards are individually good, and you win the game. But
and at least in this deck, you're like already set up to not lose because you're playing 4 copies of the Bard, so they can't cast spells on your turn.
Voice of Victory.
Voice of Victory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good fodder for this. The mobilized tokens are fun to
be casualties.
turn into full card worth of value. That's fun. Yeah, I mean, in Historic, Fearsome Whelp is a 1-power creature. You discount this thing and
play it turn 3, sack your Fearsome Whelp. Guess that doesn't really help you.
Well, I mean, if you
have
need
to be
like
later
play
in the
this like Mox, you could like sack your Fearsome Whelp to double a Fatal Push or a Thoughtseize or something that you're playing a little bit late, but like maybe it's not the worst if you've gotten all the value of mana that your hand is giving you out of your Fearsome Whelp. Maybe there's some other instant or sorcery that you want to play with your pile of dragons that this helps with. I think this is a solid card that could find a home.
Yeah, I actually like this one a lot better than I thought before. That's kind of cool. All right, should we talk about the Emeritus cycle?
Sure. So these are a cycle of 5 creatures with the prepare mechanic, and the way the prepare mechanic works is if the creature is prepared, you can cast the spell, and doing so makes the creature unprepared. So the Emeritus cycle have iconic spells from Alpha as their spells that they prepare. Swords, Recall, DT, Bolt, and Regrowth, and then they have some other text about how they prepare them, which is how you know whether these iconic effects are actually good or not. The sort of headliner one is Emeritus of Ideation. That's a 5-mana, 5/5 Flying Ward 2 in blue. It enters prepared, so it can just be a 6-mana 5/5 that draws 3 cards, or you can like space it out a little bit. And when it attacks, you may exile 8 cards from your graveyard to re-prepare it. So you get 1 recall, and after that you possibly get some number of treasure cruises, basically.
Right.
If it lives.
So I guess, yeah, let's just talk about it for a second. Like, what makes Ancestral Recall a good card is being a 1-mana draw 3. It's not being a 6-mana draw 3.
But this body is relevant.
Like, the body is relevant, but it's relevant on a 5-cost creature. So, like, this card is probably sick in Commander, but, like, you really, like, are waiting 6 turn, like, till you have 6 mana to draw 3. It is a powerful effect. I'm not saying that it isn't, but at the end of the day, it's not that good. Like, a 5-mana card is just not that good in general unless it says win the game, and 6 mana to draw 3 cards doesn't really say win the game.
Shiko Stock Up is a respectable pattern. This is more of a 6-mana Shiko Stock Up than, but this body is a little better than Shiko's.
Shiko also represents a lot of other things that are better than Stock Up. Like, Stock Up is a powerful option that you have in your tool belt, but it also has Go Ninja Go, Lightning Helix, you know, whatever you have in your graveyard. It could even just, you know, bring back all sorts of stuff. This is locking yourself into just that mode of Shiko. So I understand how this card is kind of powerful. It's definitely more powerful in Aquatic Subtlety, where you can play it for free.
It's sort of like a mini Subtlety, Atraxa, and Dig, where you can, you know, evoke it, recall. That is sort of 3 for 3ing yourself, but if you then find an Ephemerate or something, you can, or
go again.
You can blink it, and that re-prepares it, and you can maybe recall again.
The cards that you have just drawn, you can't aquatic. You can pitch them, but they don't have the Aquatic Subtlety pitch ability.
I don't know. It's kind of.
I think it's better in older formats where cheating is a lot easier. I think in Standard it's a tough sell.
I don't know. I think that the body is respectable enough, sort of like Lorehold's, that the floor is not that low, and I think this card could see play. I think it's probably worse than Riddler, and sort of fighting for a.
It's 100% worse than Riddler.
but...
Because Riddler, at its worst, is cycling for 2. You know, that's like, if you're doing that, you've probably lost whatever standard game you're playing. You know, cycling a Riddler for 2 is pretty much a death sentence when the other decks are always on their broken stuff. Like, if you're not doing broken stuff, you know, it's kind of like when you mulligan in like an old format is like, does this hand do something broken? Like, am I going to just win or do I have to mulligan? It's sort of the same thing in standard right now.
That's fair, and Riddler decks are really good at Rizzling.
Yeah.
Usually, most of them. Like
Even just cycling for 1 off of a Momo is a lot better. This also has flying, but you don't get to play this off Momo till you have 4 other mana, you know, which could be on turn 3 with Springleaf Drum, but I don't know. I get how it's powerful, but I do think that this is Commander brain stuff or like, you know, old format cheating brain stuff.
All right.
Let's talk about another one.
Sure. The white one, Emeritus of Truce, 1 white for a 3/3. When it enters, target player creates a 1/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. Then, if an opponent controls more creatures than you, this creature becomes prepared. So if you are behind by 3 creatures when this goes on the stack, you can play it, get the inkling yourself, and plow something, and for 4 mana, that situation is kind of comparable to how you'd feel about playing a Beza. It's, I think, mostly worse than Beza in most situations. If you ever are in a situation where your opponent has 1 creature and you point the thing at them and they kill this while the trigger is on the stack, you are owned. You are wrecked.
Right. Like it's at that point, it's like
crying,
closer to Pongify or some shit, you know, like you're not like, or whatever.
When,
like,
it works, it's a fucking Pongify. Or
this card sucks.
A stroke of midnight. But like a lot of the time, it's either going to be a 3/3 and a 1/1 for 3, or it's going to be a 3/3 that does a weird stroke of midnight effect, or it's going to be a situation where you have to try and you get blown the fuck out. I don't think this is as good as other white 3 and 4 drops that you would compare it to.
I think most of those like Skyclave apparition effects, I'd rather play that than this, you know, like there isn't a ton of that instant. I mean, it's Aang and it's mostly like airbending stuff, which I would rather play Aang than this card. But yeah, I think this card sucks. That's my opinion. All right. Up next, we have another card that I think sucks, is Emeritus of Woe. This one may be a little bit more doable. I think in standard, you're still really in trouble.
Like, my instinct to look at this card and think that it could be good in standard is similar to my instinct that I had with Kefka, and is therefore wrong. But
yeah, you can't play cards that cost, like, people don't even play Ouroboros anymore, okay? Like, like they do, but like people don't want to play 4-drops. But anyway, it's Emeritus of Woe, 3 and a black, 5/4 vampire warlock. This creature enters prepared at the beginning of your end step. If 2 or more creatures died this turn, this creature becomes prepared, and then it's detutor as the prepared spell. For 6 mana, you can detutor plus a 5/4.
That's pretty similar to just casting Runescar Demon, which is not a great thing to be doing. It is a legal thing to be doing in standard, thanks to foundations, but it's not very good. Like, the thing that makes me look at this card in, like, mid-range standard brain from, you know, 3 years ago, however long...
Before Bloomborough.
Yeah, before Bloomborough, before Fable got banned, and think, okay, this is sort of like Sholdred, where sometimes it's just gonna die, but if you play it from relative parity, maybe DT right away, and, like, you're still, like, pretty ahead, and if your opponent doesn't kill it, it's going to kill them. But that's sort of just not what standard games are like.
It's just everybody waiting until you tap out to combo kill you. So, I mean, yeah, there's other stuff.
There's a lot of
there's
a lot of but also more than, because if it were just combo, then
even the regular decks are combo decks too.
Your black midrange deck could pick on that a little bit with, you know, good removal and hand interaction and whatnot. And, you know, this card also being a 5/4 instead of a 4/5 is worse than Sholdred. But what the real problem is that there are so many cards all the time. You never really, even when you're trying to like kill shit and make favorable exchanges, you don't get down to relatively low resources where you can stick a thing like this and try to take over the game with it.
Yeah, I mean, even like stuff like Unholy Annex is kind of like a difficult sell right now,
And
because like
despite demonic tutoring, this thing not a demon.
It is a warlock, so it doesn't die to shoot the sheriff. Even things like playing Unholy Annex is kind of like you have to really work hard to make a deck that can play Unholy Annex and not just feel like I played something on turn 3, they're gonna kill me. Like I tapped out on my turn 3, they're on the play, they're gonna win. Like, so yeah, it's a tough sell in my opinion, but that's sort of like, it's a cool card, but the status standard is horrible if you want to play mid-range. All right, up next we have Emeritus of Conflict for 1 and a red. It's a human wizard with lightning bolt stapled to it. It does not enter prepared. It has first strike. It's a 2/2. When you cast your 3rd spell each turn, this creature becomes prepared. So it's kind of like Phoenixy, where you got to cast a bunch of spells in a turn. It seems really rough to turn this thing on. I can't imagine in Phoenix wanting...
There are like a ton of better Phoenix cards than this that are too cute and cut from Phoenix.
Right, like do people even play the bird anymore?
Ledger Shredder, they do not.
Yeah, so like Ledger Shredder is a better card than this. And
this thing can be one of the spells, not the 3rd one, but it can be the 1st or 2nd one, sort of late in the game to prepare itself. I think I agree that this is probably not great, and like it probably is just worse than other 2-drops that it competes with, or other like mana sink red aggro cards like Nova Hellkite that it would be competing with.
I don't know if there's like a possibility that it's worthwhile in some sort of storm deck where you're just like this thing kills on its own as long as you can make mana and draw cards. So I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't imagine your 2-drop slots are so like Ral and the Ruby itself. Like it seems really rough in that context too.
In a scenario where a lot of the hate pieces that you needed to get through were creatures, so bolting them mattered. Like, maybe.
But that's not how that deck wins, right?
That's not really how... Well, like, I'm saying, like, if the thing you needed to get rid of to do your storm turn was, like, a Collector Oof. Not a Collector Oof, but that sort of thing where it's a
Clarion Conqueror.
Yeah, Clarion Conqueror, or whatever.
Something.
The sort of creature that sits in play and turns off a bunch of your shit.
Like, turns off your treasures or something, yeah.
Then maybe having a
bolt on a stick,
card that's sort of a win condition that can also sort of work through to like removing some hate pieces like that when they're relevant. Maybe that's... I am, like you, pretty skeptical of this one.
All right, let's move on to the last one, which is Emeritus of Abundance for 2 and a green, Elf Druid, 3/4 Vigilance. It enters prepared. When this creature attacks, if you control 8 or more lands, this creature becomes prepared. And it's stapled on abilities regrowth, so return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So by far the weakest.
Well, this is sort of an eternal
alpha spell, but
yes, this is sort of an Eternal Witness variant. Unfortunately, it is priced at the rate of Eternal Witness variants and not Eternal Witness itself. It is a better body than Eternal Witness. It is a 3/4 Vigilance, but it is 5 mana total the first time around, more like Evolution Witness or Den Protector, or...
If you made this a 2/1 for 1, would it be cracked? In old formats, yes.
For sure. If this is a 2/1 for 1, that is...
even without Vigilance, I think then this card becomes...
That card is a fucking beating.
Yeah, brutal card. But as it is not playable in any format, right? Maybe, do you think really old formats want to do this? 8 or more land... You don't have 8 lands in any format, so...
In terms of re-preparing it, I mean, I don't know. Maybe in like really grindy like green-white decks that are like
exploration,
like birthing ritualing, and also are sometimes like actually win the game by chant locking people. Maybe would be interested in this thing. I don't know. The body is relevant. Maybe you are eventually getting to the point of re-preparing it in like sometimes in some formats, but I don't think it's great. But it might still be in in the middle or better of this
cycle. I mean, the other ones are deeply unplayable, it feels to me, except for maybe Emeritus of Ideation with aquatic subtlety stuff. I mean, I'm sure that's going to be busted in Alchemy. Don't get me wrong.
I think the Alchemy version, the way it works is it cheats out Sin, and Sin gets back Omniscience.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But maybe you play this to get a little bit more in some number to get more churn. I don't know. I would have to.
I don't know. I have to
play a game of Alchemy,
which you can't get me to do.
The last of the mythic cycles is the paradigm cycles. These are all lessons, and they all have a keyword called paradigm, which when you resolve them, you exile the spell, and after you first resolve a spell with this name, you may cast a copy of it from exile without paying its mana cost at the beginning of each of your first main phases. So this is epic from original Kamigawa, but without the downside. And these spells all have text on them. I might read some of it at some point, but the only thing that you really need to look at for these spells is their color and their mana value. The black and green ones are the cheapest and go the best with eye twitch in like Pioneer and Historic, and are therefore the best. But I'm the brave truth teller that is telling you that unlike the Overlords, these cards aren't that great, but like the Overlords, just the cheapest one is the best, and you don't need to think about them much deeper than that.
Right. I mean, the other thing you might be learning from is like a first day of class, but none of these.
First day of class or the academic dispute.
Yeah.
But the blue and red ones are too expensive, and I think that most of the time, if you're trying to learn for more like those decks in Pioneer, that is it Prowess deck, Prowess Lessons, doesn't play Mascot Exhibition. The red Improvisation Capstone is better than Mascot Exhibition, but I don't know that you're in the situation where you have 7 mana to learn for, and even when you do, is it going to be that much better than just one of the Accumulate Wisdoms from the board?
All right. I could maybe see the Germination one that puts counters on stuff in like a Chatterstorm first day of class type Storm deck, like a Ruby Storm deck essentially, but it's like Gruul Ruby Storm. But that's like, you already probably have it figured out at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I just don't think it's that useful. Maybe a one copy of, and you're if you really want to play that deck, which nobody does.
I think the green and black ones like are reasonably in your like birthing ritual, like sacrificey sort of deck. I could see being happy enough playing Eye Twitch and playing a lesson board that includes one of these two, and you cast it and resolve it, and even though the black effect is just Sign in Blood, it still probably wins you the game if you are casting it from relative stability. The green one, if you resolve it, is sort of like an Ouroborid that doesn't scale as exponentially, but that they can't kill.
Yeah.
Either of those, if it comes out of an Eye Twitch or something, is pretty good. I don't think they're really players in Standard. I think they're too expensive, and they don't really synergize with the existing things that Lessons want to do.
Yeah, potentially somewhere in Pioneer, but it still seems rough.
This Informed Inkwright card is kind of cool. It's kind of a young Pyromancer variant. 1 and a white, 2/2 Vigilance. It has Repartee, which is the Silverquill mechanic, which is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, either your own or someone else's, something good happens. In this case, it makes a 1/1 black and white Inkling with flying.
I mean, that's very powerful.
A 1/1 flyer is a lot better than the things that get crapped out by Young Pyromancer or Third Path Iconoclast or those sorts of cards usually are. This thing is also a 2/2 Vigilance, which is actually pretty significantly different than a 2/1, and triggers off of most of the same stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if it's interesting in Pioneer in a heroic type situation, either mono white or red white heroic, where you're already casting instants and sorceries that target your creatures.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple other Repartee cards that are at least sort of interesting. The Stirring Hopesinger is probably too expensive. It's a 3 mana 1/3 flying lifelink, and its Repartee pumps your entire team. It's probably too expensive for any sort of heroic style deck.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'd rather play Lean and Light Scribe. Yeah, and I do.
And then there's the white black one. Conciliator's Duelist. It's a 4/3 3, and when it enters, draw a card, and each player loses 1 life. And when you repartee it, blink something, it blinks it back at the beginning of the next end step. Like, again, it's maybe a little too hard to cast and a little too fair and mid-rangey for standard, but that one is a card I like quite a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough sell for a, four mana card that doesn't like end the game on the spot necessarily,
working with
but it is good.
Most of your heroic stuff, not auras, but like heroic style instants and sorceries, and then also working with removal. Like some of these repartee cards might be okay in like some constructed format.
Should we talk about Ral, the guest lecture?
But yeah, sure. So,
or we can do the Planeswalkers next in general.
I mean, the Dellian Fel is just literally the generic Planeswalker meme. It might be okay if you're in a deck that is looking for a Planeswalker style of threat for grindy matchups in those colors. Like, I'm not even going to go read it because it is just the meme where I think it actually pluses to gain life, zeros to draw a card. So it doesn't plus to draw a card, and then it minuses to kill something, and then has an ultimate that probably wins the game.
It's a Planeswalker, folks.
Yeah, Ral is a little bit more interesting. First and foremost, Black Ral. 1 and 2 black, comes in at 3 loyalty. Pluses to Surveil 2. -1 to make any number of target players each discard a card. -2 to Unearth, or return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. -7, win the game. Maybe like Oculus would be interested in a card like this.
Yeah, Eyeshadow maybe.
Sort of sits around being a Planeswalker. It is in black and it's an Unearth effect. It's not very good at sitting around being a Planeswalker because
Surveil's not the end of the world, but yeah on turn 3, all you're doing is surveilling. It doesn't draw like Kaido, or
presenting a 4 loyalty thing that they can kill very easily if they want to, or like 3 mana, make them discard 1, or 3 mana mutual discard on 2 loyalty without the edict part of the Liliana. Seems a little suspect to me, but
yeah, I agree. But it's kind of cool. I mean, yeah, just a little toolboxy card, I think.
As we scroll through Mythic Spoilers, there are a couple of sort of interesting rootsy creatures. One of them is Vastlands Scavenger. This would be a really interesting roots creature for Pioneer if it were, instead of 1 and 2 green for a 4/4 Death Touch, if it were 1 and a green for a 2/2, like anything, just if it were just a grizzly bear that entered prepared, I'd kind of be about it. As it is, you can't Tyvar it back and it's worse, but it is a 4/4 Death Touch for 3. That's solid stat line. Enters prepared, and its spell is Bind to Life. 4 and a green for an instant. You mill 7 cards and put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. So, like, this is a way to spend Badger mana.
Probably get you whatever you're looking for, yeah. I mean,
it might mill a Rhythm.
You might just get your Crater Hoof.
It has to compete with a lot of powerful stuff to.
I think it would be better as a 3/5 once again. But yeah, as a 4/4, it is good. It is sort of a kill on sight creature, right? Because if you hit a hoof off of your Bind to Life, then the game's over and you have 5 mana in your green deck. So interesting card. Your interest in this card in Roots, much cooler, much better application.
The other card that I'm sort of interested in, there are a couple of Reassembling Skeleton variants that are a little better on rate than usual and therefore could be Roots playable. Probably put them on the slide, but don't need to talk about them. But the uncommon Lluwen, 2 black and a green, 3/4. He enters prepared and you can exile a creature card from your graveyard to prepare him as a sorcery, and his prepare spell is a sorcery that for 1 black-green hybrid makes a pest. The pests in this Strixhaven gain 1 life when they attack rather than when they die. So, like, I could see this being interesting as like a 1-of to Rhythm 4 in Insidious Roots, because if you have a Tyvar in play, the pest tokens tap for mana, so you can just
exile every card in your graveyard, every creature.
Move a bunch of creatures out of your graveyard, make a bunch of pests to keep casting the spell, and make a bunch of roots that aren't tapped yet and also can represent mana or whatever else you're trying to do. I don't know if it's a better 4-drop to chord for in Pioneer Roots than just Ouroborod or, other things that you would have. I don't really know if it's worth a slot, but it's kind of cool as that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think 1-of sometimes might be fun. fun. You gotta test it out and see if Ouroboros just better, but it's certainly a cool thing in Roots where you just get to keep going and keep exiling stuff with the Tyvar.
Yeah, and then also like whether it is how regularly this is going to be a better thing to rhythm for than just an Osteomancer adept, which in the situations where this is good, can you just usually involve a Tyvar? Are you better off just like finding an adept instead and just breaching? Maybe. I think it's sort of cool. Another sort of cool, sort of rootsy card in Witherbloom, even though Lorehold is the one that's supposed to have the Leaves the Graveyard mechanic in this set, is Cauldron of Essence. So this is sort of a recurring nightmare variant, but with more cost up front. So it's an artifact for 3 mana. When a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, sort of a static Blood Artist effect. And then for 3 mana, you can tap it and sack a creature to return another creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So like once you pay the upfront cost for the bad Bastion of Remembrance, or the Bastion of Remembrance that doesn't come with a body, you know, if it sticks around, it is basically just recurring nightmare. Just every turn you sack something out and get something bigger and meaner back.
Yeah, I kind of like this card. It's an artifact too, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, it needs to be in a deck with a ton of creatures. I don't know how valuable being an artifact is. I mean, it depends on how hard it is to kill an artifact in Standard, or how many other artifacts are this is catching strays from, or if, you know, this is the thing that they have to go after.
It also means, though, that you can play it in, like, my favorite pet tech, the Jund weapons manufacturing sort of deal with biotech specialists.
That's sort of cool. You can like sack a robot to get back a combo piece. 3 mana is not that efficient when your deck is full of 2-drops, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that deck is not really playable anymore after Standard has quickly powered up, but that's okay. It's a cool card.
In Golgari, there is also Blech, Loafing Pest. He is sort of a big Ajani's Pridemate. There's also a big Ajani's Pridemate at common, which is in Witherbloom, the ape pest mascot. These are both sort of overpriced. The pest mascot is just an Ajani's Pridemate, but that's sort of a novel thing for Pauper. Triggering it a bunch with the green Soul Warden is legal in Pauper, and there is a Soul Sister Frog for 2 mana in this set, Bogwater Lumerette, that can trigger it, so that might be a Pauper deck that one could seriously consider. And then Blech cares about a bunch of creature types, the same ones as Blech's from original Strixhaven, I think. Pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders, but when you gain life, he puts 1/1 counters on all of them. He's in awkward colors. You'd have to splash him if you were trying to build like life gain bats, but that is a pretty powerful effect for that sort of deck.
Yeah, and you don't even get to use your bat mana on him, so that's a little rough, but powerful, I mean.
Yes. Golgari also has Vicious Rivalry, which is kind of a toxic deluge. 4 mana, you pay X life and destroy all artifacts and creatures with mana value X or less. That is a good wrath if you're in the colors. Hard to know how much upside hitting artifacts is going to be, but I suspect it is a reasonably significant one.
I mean, it's good against Lessons, it's good against Rakdos, so.
Yeah, and being good against Lessons makes it a lot where Wraths would otherwise be kind of dead, makes it much more main deckable. And then there is a weird tutor, Dina's Guidance. 3 mana, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, and then you can put it into your hand or your graveyard. So, you know, you either search up your Superior Spider-Man to your hand, or you entomb your Bringer or Arden.
Yeah, so that's cool to be able to have instant speed tutors, a lot of combo sort of stuff in Standard, so I don't know, maybe this replaces Formidable Speaker, I'm not sure, in some decks. A lot of decks are getting value off both the discard and the, you know, thing off Speaker, but...
You know, I would have to play that deck a lot more to know if this, or to have a strong opinion of whether this was going to be better than Formidable Speaker or not. I would have to know how often I'm getting value out of the discard, how often I'm losing games to trying to find the Superior Spider-Man, and I guess finding the Superior Spider-Man is fine. How many times I'm losing games due to not getting the thing I need in the graveyard is where this is kind of better because of the Entomb mode. would, but...
Speaker also puts something into your
Right.
graveyard
Like,
from your hand.
often,
how much do you need it out of your deck, and how often do you need it out of your hand?
How often are you able to Speaker for a Spider-Man, but can't discard the thing that you want to reanimate in the process?
I don't know any other decks that are really looking for this, but more will appear over time. We're only going to create more Splinter Twin type situations in Standard every set, so this card may not be right away, but at some point it may be your go-to tutor card.
Quandrix cards next. Their mechanic is Increment. So Increment is sort of like Evolve, but works with things aside from creatures. So when you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast it was more than the creature's power or toughness, they get a +1/+1 counter on them. The big Quandrix rare is Berta, Wise Extrapolator. I like to think of myself as a wise extrapolator. So 1/4 Frog Druid for 4 mana with Increment, and whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on her, add a mana of any color. So this surely goes infinite with something. Not clear what off the top of my head, but mana goes Burr. Yeah, so probably to wombo combo with this thing, you need to have something that is actually putting counters on it other than Increment that is, you know, going crazy. There's probably going to end up being some way that the mana this produces is good enough to put another counter on it, which makes another mana, which goes infinite. Probably sort of a meme deck.
It seems really tough to
This
make
card
happen.
is sort of just fine outside of the meme infinite combo. It is probably worth some amount of mana. Its body is not terrible. It also has an ability to, for X and tap it, make a 0/0 green and blue fractal and put X/1/1 counters on it. That is a reasonable mana sink. I don't know if it's good enough for like the sort of decks that do this sort of thing in Standard. It doesn't really play the nicest with Badgermole and friends, but it's not crazy to me that this card would be playable somewhere. It has some combo potential, and its floor is high enough, I think.
Yeah, it seems really tough, but probably takes somebody who's wiser and better at extrapolating to figure out how to play this card than I.
There are a couple other Increment cards.
Ambitious
Augmenter. It's a 1 green for a 1/1 turtle wizard. Relevant creature types, both of them, actually. Potentially. It has Increment, and then it has, when it dies, if it had one or more counters on it, you create a 0/0 blue and green fractal and put its counters on that. So it's sort of a weird variant, like evolving adaptive type card, whatever the original version of that was. And then it's sort of also a Doom Traveler. It dies into a creature, and the bigger it is, the bigger the thing it dies into is. You know, it has to actually die, which is rough, and, you know, it's not always going to be easy to sacrifice your big thing in a way that feels good, but I kind of like this. I don't know what to do with it exactly, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's so tough because, like, after the first one, it's so hard to count on it working, right? I mean, having a 2-drop, then a 3-drop is just kind of not what things are really about. People play almost no 3-drops a lot of the time. I mean, maybe it's just like you don't need it in, like, your Ouroboros deck. Kind of cool with the scales type stuff that's kind of going around, but a lot of that is like you play 2s and then you play the Leatherheads for lessons, but like that's the only way to power him up. It's like kind of rough in the decks that exist.
He also can wear the other like scalesy stuff. You
can just grow him with your mutagens and stuff like that, and
you know, then
he dies and gives you value.
Gets you paid back, which is maybe not the worst.
Yeah, but the Increment doesn't help that much. You know, maybe it gives him 1 counter, or if you play its cast, I guess. So you can't even like cast Weirdness to 11 and have him get the extra counter.
That's true. He will be on 2 when you cast
because when it enters, it's already done. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's a cool card. I like it too. I think once again, kind of hard to make it work, but there's certainly cool things that you can do around it. Is that all our Increment stuff? Is there any other?
I think those were the ones that I thought were most exciting in as far as Increment possible.
It's kind of a hard mechanic to make super good.
Yeah, I mean, Evolve's okay. Evolve cards have seen some...
It's a little bit stickier than Evolve, though. where you have to actually pay that amount of mana.
That is true. Every time they make you actually pay for something is kind of awkward. All right, maybe just a few other random cards that we have thoughts about. Erode is one that many people have had thoughts about. It's basically Path to Exile.
But destroys.
It destroys, but it hits planeswalkers because they can't put stuff that hits planeswalkers in Universes Beyond sets, so they have to increase the stuff that hits planeswalkers in universe sets. You know, assuming that planeswalkers are relevant, which I am not certain of with either of the ones in this set, but they're fine. Path to Exile. Pathing a Llanowar Elves tends to be pretty bad. It does set them back a little bit on mana if they also have the Badger Mole, but it is generally not a winning proposition. So as a result, many people have had spirited debate about Erode. Some of them say that it's very good, others say that it's unplayable and worse than Get Lost. I think it's probably better than Get Lost.
It costs one less, so...
Yes, it costs literally half as much. And
it doesn't get enchantments, but...
I hope you, dear listener, are listening through the full, like, however long this is and giving us that watch time, but you can simplify a lot of this evaluation into, is it cheap? If yes, good. If no, bad.
You probably can do that to any one of our recap podcasts. We talk a lot about the cost of cards, as it's very relevant towards 60-card formats.
Yes. So 60-card formats older than Pioneer have Path to Exile in them, and it's not playable.
Well, except in, like, the Boros Panza deck.
Yeah.
So, like, that's kind of like the one example. If you're the two people who play that deck on Mitgo, this card may be
if you are like really into aggressively basic checking people, then this is good. As a consequence, this might be good in like standard blue-white control type decks, because if they don't have to search, but if they do, it triggers Wanchitong.
Yeah.
In Pioneer, any 1-mana way to tag Greasefang is going to be somewhat playable, and especially if you're in a color that didn't previously have one. And this honestly is less conditional than turning on Revolt or Bargain on the turn that Greasefang comes down, especially on the draw.
Correct. So, yeah, if you're worried about your Greasefang mirrors, or maybe you play, I don't know, there's the green-white deck might play some copies in the board. I don't know.
Blue-white control, I imagine, would play it.
Yeah.
If you're in basically any non-black deck, or even a black-white deck that was worried about its ability to turn on Revolt in a Greasefang matchup, and it like could be interested in this. Like, 1 really is a lot less than 2. You very often can proactively do something and leave this up when you wouldn't be able to leave up, you know, go for the throat, shoot the sheriff, get lost.
And so on, yeah, any 2-mana kill spell. I think it's a good tool piece. I don't think it's a 4 of include in every white deck or anything.
I don't think you're playing 4 of this unless you are also playing 4 wands and 4 fields. Is it?
Demolition Field is the one in Standard right now, I think.
Standard.
From Foundations.
But I could see this being some number across the 75 back through Pioneer, and then if you just really like basic checking people in older formats than that. But,
another 1-mana card that is okay is Flashback. For an instant 1 red, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains Flashback until end of turn. The Flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. So probably mostly going to be used for Storm or Phoenix type stuff. Just need to cast more spells.
I think this will see play in every format that it's legal, but
it's not like broken or anything.
Also think I think it's not broken and maybe being overrated a little bit. People underrate how much value the Ambush Viper part of Snapcaster Mage is worth.
For sure. And even how much Snapcaster Mage is like in Historic right now. Is there...
I mean,
it's kind of a tough sell,
Snapcaster
right?
Mage does turn on Flame of Anor, so like he's good in like
the wizard shells.
Some like more controlling versions of wizards. And this does not turn on Flame of Anor. It does get back good and powerful spells. It is
casting your Flame of Anor again is pretty good.
It is half as expensive as Regrowth, and in a better color. Regrowth used to be restricted in Vintage. There are a number of things that will be worth a premium cost of a single mana to flashback and cast from the graveyard. It's also cute with like other things that are kind of cute execute with Snapcaster Mage, like See the Truth, which is like Accumulate Wisdom. It is an Anticipate if you cast it normally, but if you cast it from somewhere other than your hand, it's a recall. So, you know, this makes one that's in your graveyard a recall. Is that better than just doing Accumulate Wisdom stuff? There's sort of a twist on Expressive Iteration in this set. Flow State. So this card, I think, is going to be very good, especially in old formats. 1 and a blue sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. If there is an instant and a sorcery card in your graveyard, instead put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. So Expressive Iteration is banned in Pioneer and Legacy. This card, I think, is just better than Expressive Iteration in Legacy. It doesn't require you to be red, and I think it's more likely to be on 2 in Legacy, or Timeless if you had to force or daze something. If you go Island Ponder and then you to force or daze something because oops sent it on turn 1, or just like someone played a scary Legacy threat that you decided the game couldn't be about, well, this like gets you back your Force of Will card and then some with selection. I think this card is probably just better than Expressive Iteration and Force of Will formats, because I think that getting the instant and sorcery in the graveyard is more likely to happen by turn 2, whereas EI doesn't really do the thing until you have 2 lands in play, or unless you have a pretty high critical mass of 0s.
Right.
I think this card is very, very good and sort of better the further back you go.
And like you have enough sorcery speed cantrips in your deck that make it so that you'll hit both.
Like
I mean, this is one
Ponder,
itself.
You have Ponder, other copies of this thing. Thoughtseize is a card that you would be interested in playing in those formats. It has some deck building restrictions.
Yeah, because you need to have enough both sorcery, because you play a lot of instants in those decks. But
yeah, but I don't know if the deck building requirements are. I think that the sorceries requirement is easier to meet than the color requirement on Expressive
I would
Iteration.
probably agree. I don't know the cards exactly how to build a deck, but it seems true.
Like, EI is not a card they could let out in Legacy. It is...
Well, they've banned so many of the cheap red threats in Legacy as well. Red has bans on Ragavan and Dreadhorde Arcanist, right? So,
Yeah,
your red is pretty taxed in through the bans. So, like, splashing for iteration seems... I mean, it's already banned, but, like, you know, hypothetically unban it. It's just difficult to see.
Yeah, I mean, DRC is still very good. DRC is also really good at turning this on, though, because it
and you definitely
might
want to
mill
also
over
put sorceries in your deck to have the delirium possibility.
And sometimes you'll just, like, you know, DRC on 1, force something, and feel like you need to YOLO a flow state, and maybe the flow state surveils another flow state, and then you're getting 2 cards instead of 1, and you are happy instead of sad. A lot of good blue cards in this set. Fractal Anomaly is another one. This card would have been nutty busto if VV were still legal. Maybe it still is in Pioneer if you're trying to build VV Cauldron there, or Modern.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that looks pretty good in VV and Pioneer.
1 blue instant, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal with X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn. So all the cards that this is good with are banned from Standard, or at least many of them. So I don't know when you're gonna cast this and have it be like a 3/3 and like be happy with that in Standard. It's probably better than Tiger Seal and Is It Looting? Maybe it is. I don't know. But and not that anyone plays
I don't think
that
deck's
anymore.
playable anymore, but
yeah,
it was never very good, I don't think. But
yeah, it's hard to imagine Standard like making this be a 3/3 or a 4/4 with a small enough amount of work and early enough that you are really happy with it. But it is potentially powerful if it goes in a shell with the right pieces.
I mean, yeah, in older formats, like you Faithless Looting and you've already drawn 3 cards, so that, like, you could get a 3/3 on turn 2 off of a Faithless Looting. Is that good? I don't know, but
I mean, it defends the Tameo you just flipped.
That's true.
Although once you're in like Faithless Looting Brainstorm formats, is this thing actually bigger than Nethergoyf reliably?
You're also afraid of drawing so many cards against Bowmasters, potentially. So, like, going all in on drawing cards is a little risky.
Yeah, it's kind of weird and faces more competition the further back deck you go in search of the biggest Fractal Anomaly that you can make.
But in Pioneer, it's probably Busta.
The rate is there, and it seems like it should do something somewhere at some point.
If it was common, I would be like, this is awesome, but
this card would be insane in Pauper. It would be awesome for like a month.
Until they had to ban it, yeah. Were there any other Pauper cards worth talking about other than...
The bear, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know if it's best in Pauper or in other formats, but Studious First-Year for 1 green. It's a bear wizard 1/1. It enters prepared, and it's got rampant growth stapled to it. So search your library for a basic land card, put that into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle them.
So this is another one where I would have to be sort of in the lab on the Pauper Spy deck to have a strong opinion on whether this is better than the 2-mana wall that searches a basic into your hand. Difference is that that thing comes down for 2 mana and gets you the land out of your deck to work you towards your counting to 4 and also your deck being set up for Spy. This thing comes down for only 1, but then costs another 2. But then when you spend the 2, it actively ramps you. But like, you only play 4 lands in your deck. How much is your land drop worth? And again, I don't actually know. I haven't watching or playing the Pauper Spy deck to really know the difference between these two cards.
I think this probably is not an ad, because you're not playing like Ephemerate or anything like this.
Well, that's sort of another
because that card
thing
could be ephemerated too, right?
Yeah, that's sort of another thing with these prepare cards, is that they seem like a conscious effort to me to make blinking worse. Like, blinking often re-prepares a thing, but you still have to spend mana to
get the ability again.
Mind into Matter is sort of cool. X, green and a blue, draw X cards, then you may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So this can be like 5 mana, draw 3, and put an Oculus in. Is that good? Can be 4 mana, draw 2, and put Future Spider-Man or Benevolent River Spirit or something in. Is that good? It can just be a gazillion mana, draw a gazillion -2, and put a large thing in. I don't know how good
6 mana
this
for
is.
Kona. I don't know. That's kind of
6 mana for
expensive.
Kona that also is drawing cards, though.
Yeah, which
makes it
drawing 4 is pretty good.
better. Sort of related to that, in terms of cheating out 2s, your Benevolent River Spirits and Uharis is the Lorehold Charm. There is a cycle of charms. The Lorehold one is a small reanimation, an edict for artifacts, or it's an overrun. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. Yeah, I think all the charms are fine. Quandrix is a quench that sometimes kills enchantments or sometimes is a pump spell. Quenches aren't really standard playable outside of lesson synergies, but maybe this isn't too hard to cast. It's okay.
I mean, countering something on turn 2 is pretty good if you can have untapped mana. So that mode is not completely useless in standard, but I agree. You want your counters to be a little better if the game's gonna run long. But the ability to destroy an enchantment, pretty reasonable. The pump, less so useful in that kind of deck, so I don't know. But
the Witherbloom one, I think, is actually pretty good. One of the modes is you may sacrifice a permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards. So that's any permanent. So if you're flooding, it can be a land. And if not, it's just kind of a, it's a Deadly Dispute without the treasure, and that's hard to cast, but that's kind of okay. And then destroy target non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. That hits a lot. Hits class enchantments, hits a lot of small creatures. I think the sum of the parts on Witherbloom Charm would make me pretty happy to play it if I was in those colors.
Yeah.
In standard, especially if I have some sort of sack synergies. Prismari Charm, also quite good. Specifically, probably a pretty good card in the Spellmentals deck. It's sort of an overcosted Surveil 2 and draw a card at 2 mana. Like, helps get your graveyard full. 1 damage to each of 1 or 2 targets. So Llanowar Elf, Badger Land, pew pew, and then return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So I think the collection of modes here is probably enough that if you're in that sort of Izzet deck, and many people are, to the great displeasure of the standard community, this does something.
It's tough, I think. It's obviously only sort of looking at Spelementals. I could maybe see playing some copies in Affinity, which is not a real deck, but it's one I play a lot. You know, because I'm already in my sideboard playing that shitty card from Lorwyn Eclipse that does 2 to 1 and 1 to another at sorcery speed. So maybe I'd consider this over that, but...
Yeah, that one at least fully answers a Badger. This does not kill the Badger itself, and the bounce mode is non-land permanent, so it doesn't get the land. But I think... of these, I think Witherbloom Charm is the one you're most likely to have. Witherbloom and Prismari are the ones you're most likely to have a synergy where you're just happy with the sum of the parts. One of the modes will be good enough of the time that you are happy playing it. I think Lorehold Charm, if you're specifically trying to cheat on some 2-drops, then it's okay. Silverquill Charm is, I think, the worst of them. It either puts 2 1/1 counters on target creature, exiles a target creature with power 2 or less, or helixes your opponent's face. And that one, I think the removal mode is just a little too conditional, and the other modes are a little too weak, and it's a little too hard to cast for me to be super enthused about it. The other 4 charms are relatively playable. Oh, Social Snub is kind of cool. I am kind of suspect of it like actually being that good, but it's cool, so I'm going to talk about it because we're looking at it. 1 white and a black sorcery. When you cast this spell, while you control a creature, you may copy it, and each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So if you cast this while you have a creature, it double edicts your opponent. If you only have 1 creature, it only edicts you once, and then drains for twice as much. If you have like 4 or 5 mana, you can cast this, copy it, and then like Village Rites Deadly Dispute your creature while both copies are on the stack, and
you're valuing.
You're getting the value. No. A card that has rotated out of standard and is therefore not especially playable anymore, but is cool, Sledgemoor Witch from original Strixhaven. If you have that in play, it has Magecraft, so when you cast or copy a spell, you make a pest. So you have a Sledgemoor Witch that you have untapped with. Things are already going great for you. And then you social snub your opponent. You do Regina George shit to them. You create 2 pests because you cast 1 and copied it. So pest. You sack your 2 pests. They sack 2 real creatures. And I'm trying to think of what the Mean Girls joke that is appropriate to that scenario is, and I'm not coming up with it. It has been many years since I saw that film.
That's okay. Can't make fetch happen.
Oh, Mind Roots is another cool one. Maybe a little overpriced, but it's funny. 1 black and a green sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, so Mind Rot. Put up to 1 land card discarded this way onto the battlefield tapped under your control. So if they discard land, which you usually want to do when you Mind Rot them, it ramps you.
Mind Roots. I like that one. Yeah, that's fun. I will probably be playing that at least in draft.
It's a really cool draft card, actually. It helps turn on your Converge stuff, even if you aren't a zillion colors. You maybe get an extra color off your opponent some of the time. That's kind of neat. But yeah, it's a cool card. It might be there. Like, it is a combination of things that are, like, close to being there in Standard.
Yeah, I guess the hand hate stuff's a little rough right now, but...
Yeah, speaking of Converge and playing a zillion colors, there are a bunch of 6-mana cards with Converge, which is something based on the number of colors that you spent to cast it in this set. I don't think any of them are that exciting, or they're maybe just not exciting for us because, like, you're spending 6 mana on them and playing a zillion colors, so, like, that's just sort of not the magic that you or I are that interested in. But people are speculating that because these cost 6 mana instead of 5, these Converge spells, that means there's going to be another color or pseudo-color in Reality Fracture, and...
Please don't do that.
Yeah, the closest thing that Magic has to a 6th color is dedicated
Bullshit.
colorless support, and it is the worst shit ever. They should stop making colorless cards before they make a 6-color. Move away from that more than towards it. Also, the 5 colors of Magic, the fact that its binomial decomposition is such that there are exactly 10 2-color pairs and exactly 10 3-color combinations, that's just beautiful. And as long as we're in the Math Wizards set, I'm going to come out and say that 5 colors are one thing that is genuinely perfect about Richard Garfield's design, and you shouldn't try and change it. Or
especially not now, as we've
break
been
out
playing
from
this
it.
game for 30 years. It's just like, come on, like.
I suspect if there were purple mana or whatever, it would work very like colorless mana in Eldrazi sets, but Eldrazi are bullshit, and this would also be bullshit. Please do not do this thing. There are some other cards. Mana Sculpt is a cancel variant, but if you control a wizard, it's a mana drain. Not in the sense of costing 2, but in the sense that you get mana drain mana. So, you know, Snap Sculpt could be a thing. I don't know that there are enough wizards to support Wizards Matter stuff in Standard or Pioneer.
There certainly is.
Well, like, support it enough that you would put a cancel in your deck.
Oh, maybe not.
Like,
Maybe not that.
Like a card that is, cancel, or like Wizard's Lightning is not, Wizard's Lightning or Wizard's Retort is not very good unless you control a wizard.
There are some pretty powerful
those
wizards
cards,
in Pioneer, at least.
Those cards tend to be better like in formats where they coexist with a little more critical mass, and yeah, where there's a little more critical mass of wizards, and cards like Snapcaster Mage or Dreadhorde Arcanist in particular that can like leverage the wizard typing while also synergizing with them in other ways. A wizard that is going to be in Standard, although I think it's the only reason why I think this card might be somewhat playable is that it's a Merfolk 1-mana harmonized trio, Merfolk Bard Wizard. So 1/1, you can tap it and 2 other untapped creatures you control to prepare it, and once it's prepared, it can brainstorm. And this is, when I first looked at this card, I was like, this thing is embarrassing. This is the most Dies to Bowmaster card I've ever seen, and 2, it is just like really hard to set up. The floor is bad. I hate everything about this. And then I realized it had Merfolk typing, and you are just so starved for playable 1-drops in Merfolk decks that maybe you would consider this one.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what Merfolk looks like in Historic. I doubt it's very good.
Historic Merfolk has been sort of okay relatively.
They added
recently.
a few new cards. They added that white card.
Yeah, but also it's a good Harbinger deck if it's just mono blue, especially if it's just mono blue. But I don't know if this makes the cut in Historic Merfolk. If you're trying to build Merfolk in Standard, you currently have like 3 sort of playable 1-drops across 3 colors, and this maybe gets you over the line of having enough playable 1-drops in your Kindred deck. It is also pretty good at preparing itself. I don't think that deck could possibly support Fabled Passage to shuffle your Brainstorm, but one of those 1-drops, Cenote Scout, and I guess also Sentinel of the Nameless City with maps can sort of explore you through a Brainstorm. Maybe that's good.
That's so rough. I mean, having to spend all the rest of your mana to fix your Brainstorm sucks. So
if you Brainstorm a land to the top, explore it into your hand, and like then play it and
map
use it
the
to,
other
use
one,
it to
yeah.
pay for a map, that's okay. Like, you're moving, you're probably getting a reasonable spell off the Brainstorm. Like, being able to like mill or just draw through lands with Explore instead of real card draw is something, but
it's also like it doesn't even get
like,
Brainstorm without having to stick around for a turn and then also tapping 3 creatures.
That's true.
Which
but, like,
is not bad if
yeah.
you have the Deep-Root Pilgrimage out, but, you know.
Would Pilgrimage consider that 1 or 2 instances of creatures tapping? So it's 1 or more non-token Merfolk you control become tapped. And the question I have, because it is tapping itself and the other two creatures as part of the same cost, but it is separate parts of the cost. And it turned out I was wrong about something I said about this last couple sets ago when I was talking about the interaction between Moonshadow and Does Machines. It turns out even though the mill and the discard are part of the same resolution, Moonshadow does count them separately. You can mill over a permanent and discard a permanent, and
so maybe this is two triggers, maybe it's one trigger, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that this card is bad, but it is maybe good enough that if you are desperate for a 1-drop Merfolk,
which you may be.
If you are a Merfolk enjoyer, maybe it's okay. Anything else we really feel like talking about?
Passionate about any of these cards? I don't know. We probably missed whatever's the best.
There's a mill creature, Exhibition Tidecaller, 1 mana 0/2 in blue. It's a Djinn wizard. Any wizard synergies that you want to jam in your mill deck. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, target player mills 3 cards. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, that player mills 10 instead. You are only ever milling 10 if you have to hardcast Archive Trap.
Oh, it has to be spent. Yeah. Mana spent, these abilities are all useless. You don't actually ever spend the mana. Because I was like, if it was like talking about CMC, then you attack with this, then you use your technique and mill half their library plus 10 would be pretty good, but it doesn't work.
Well, you would mill 10 and then mill half of what's left of their library. So it's more like half their library plus 5.
But still, that's decent. I mean, 3...
And it doesn't work, so...
It doesn't work, yeah. That would be decent, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work with Sneaked Kitsune's technique, doesn't work with non-hardcast Archive Trap. It's sort of just a crab. It mills 3 when you cast spells, which you do a lot of in mill decks, so maybe it's good. The Opus part is probably not
ever triggering.
Scheming Silvertongue is sort of a guy, not that excited about it. If it were a 2/2 flying lifelink, I would be more interested in it. Also, if it were a slightly more relevant type, not that Vampire or Warlock are bad types, but they aren't relevant for life gain decks. At the beginning of your second main phase, if you gain 2 or more life this turn, it becomes prepared. When it's prepared, it can sign in blood. So it does not turn on just by attacking itself, which kinda is rough. It is a pretty good mana sink for that sort of life gain deck, but Golden Sidekick went from a card that I was playing around with in Timeless to a card that was pretty bad by going from a 2/2 lifelink to a 1/3 lifelink. It's just kind of a worse stat line for this sort of flying lifelink creature, and worse, especially when it cares about volume of life gained, as these cards do. So that's a little rough. There are a couple of good white, I think they're all uncommon, so not Pauper relevant, but Daydream is kind of cool. It's a sorcery blink spell, so relevant for scamming Warp, but not for scamming Evoke. And then it returns with a 1/1 counter on it, and it flashbacks for 3.
Pretty good in your Riddler scam deck, maybe. If you are blue-white, you already had the Splash Portal. Maybe you want a little more redundancy.
Yeah,
the flashback makes it better, right? So
somehow you're not in blue in a deck that...
Well, if you're scamming Riddler, you have to be.
If you're somehow not scamming Riddler and only interested in scamming like Nova Hellkite, or maybe you're really in on dragons and you're just scamming Nova Hellkite and Shiko, and you're mostly Boros.
That's not bad.
Like, maybe you would play this, alongside Go Ninja Go for this sort of effect, but like the fact that it flashes back is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
Spirit Call Enthusiast is not a very good card, but it does go infinite with Goldspan Dragon. When it is a 3 mana 3/3, whenever 1 or more tokens you control enter, this creature becomes prepared. Its prepared spell is called Scroll Boost. 1 and a white, sorcery, 1 or 2 target creatures each gain +2/+2 until end of turn. So Goldspan Dragon makes tokens when he attacks, or when a spell like Scroll Boost is pointed at him, he makes treasures. Those treasures crack for 2. You can keep scroll boosting your Goldspan Dragon ad infinitum. If it is before your combat step, you can go to combat combat, swing with the Infinite Goldspan Dragon, and if they don't have a flying blocker or way to remove it, that will kill your opponent. If you are in second main, you need to have like a fling or something.
Yep, that's kind of cool. I like Goldspan Dragon.
He's my friend.
Yeah, he's my friend. He's been on Do Not Disturb for a while, but I'd love for him to come back into the fold. I don't think that this is going to bring me back into the fold with him, unfortunately.
It's a rough sell in Pioneer, but, you know, you get to play Fable. It also triggers this. A couple more white uncommons that I think pretty good. Group Project, create a 2/2 red and white spirit creature, and then sort of similar to Battle Screech, flashes back, tapping 3 untapped creatures you control. There's also a red-white tappy legend at rare, Aziza, Mage Tower Captain. Not playing Quidditch, do not put in the newspaper that they are playing Quidditch. Also, fuck Joanne Rowling. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may tap 3 untapped creatures you control. If you do, you copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. So every set, I am given a new and exciting reason to be upset that they didn't put my girl Magda Brazen Outlaw into Foundations. But, you know, tappy stuff, you can... Battle Screech has been okay at various points in various formats. If you can go wide enough, tapping 3 things can be worth the value for either of these things to get a thing for free.
Yeah, it works pretty well with a Crowan Crusader who makes 1s whenever he's targeted.
That's fun. That's also a Pioneer thing. That would have been another totally reasonable Foundations card. Yes, it would have, you know, bugged the anti-Izzet people. But yeah,
I don't even know if they're interested in playing that. Like,
Prowessy decks aren't that pump spelly, actually, now.
Yeah, well, once they banned Monstrous Rage, there's no real reason for pump spells. It's just not the way that it goes. You're not that worried about winning fast.
And speaking of pump spells, there is... uncommon.
Oh, Ancestral Anger got printed into Standard.
Speaking of heroic stuff, Ancestral Anger.
Okay, that's sick.
Graduation Day. 1 white enchantment, so another repartee card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Some combo potential, some just value potential.
It kind of sucks that it says instant or sorcery spell because it is an enchantment itself. And so, like, in Prowess, you don't really want to, like, build up, but, like, I could see in, like, the enchantments deck, like the Boros enchantments deck that had been going around for a while.
If
like
this triggered off
of enchantments
just targeted
spells,
like
then
heroic,
that would be a lot better. But as it is, it's kind of tough because, like, I have to now on turn 1 play this thing and do nothing, which is fine. But then, you know, like, how long is it before I get value? Monastery Swiftspear not in Standard anymore. Your 1-drop that you can do a pump spell to be effective on is kind of rough.
Yeah, the fact that it triggers off of your removal spells also is not nothing, like the other repartee cards, but
that's
it
something.
So, like, you get to play more of a game of Magic in the process of trying to set this up. You aren't as
Which is not what you're
in.
ever trying to do in Prowess. You don't want to play
That's
Magic.
true.
You want to kill your opponent before they have a chance to do anything. Playing Magic is for mid-range and control players, you know? Like, I'm not looking to have a real game. I'm looking to crush you before you get a chance to do anything.
If you want a game to last 3 turns, play Imagination.
Yeah.
Hashtag kind of sponsored.
But
hashtag conflict of interest.
But yeah, I did not realize Ancestral Anger was in the set, though. That does excite me. That is a card I like a lot. Will I be able to play it? I mean, it's probably just best in Delirium, which probably doesn't need it, but...
Yeah, I don't know what the deck looks like for Ancestral. I mean, like, maybe it's just good in
just
Prowess.
Like red-blue Prowess. I mean, probably it is, yeah.
Maybe there's some sort of red-white repartee deck that is interested in having Ancestral Angers and Wild Rides and such as its sort of, like, heroic stuff. Delirium is a little... Not that that deck's been done very much in a while. It seemed to me like it was a little glutted on sorceries and needed more instants to count to 4, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
It's certainly, yeah, like Breakout is easy to get in there. You have a lot of instants, though. I mean, you're playing some number of the double strike cards and then protection spells. as instants, like Overprotect and potentially Blossoming, whatever.
Breakout is another sort of cool card with some of the mana value 2 potentially matters stuff, like the blue-green draw spell that puts in a thing of mana value X or less, and then the Lorehold command. So maybe there's like a Naya or a Teamer deck that would be interested in being both a Breakout and Mind into Matter deck to put in
The Water
Spoderman
Spirit and
Spirit.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, at least assuming it could
$29.99.
actually like do things with the Spider-Man. He cares about stuff that's maybe a little different from some of this stuff, but I don't know. It is unfortunate that both of the good sort of cheaty 2s. What I'm saying is it would be nice if Lorehold Charm could go alongside Breakout and do something, but all the stuff you want to cheat in is blue in your Naya deck, which is kind of rough.
Yeah, that is kind of rough. The only two 2-mana cards, are red-blue or blue-blue. So that's kind of tough. I just think that there are enough in white. If you're already splashing white, there's enough reanimation stuff that
And just play, at that point,
just
play
play
Oculus.
play Oculus. Yeah,
It doesn't work with Lorehold Charm, any of these things that care about mana value 2, but
yeah. I do like that idea. I like the Spider-Man 2099, and
I don't actually remember what it does other than that it's pretty good. It has double strike.
it has
usually
double
pretty good.
strike, and it
It cares about casting spells from exile or something.
yeah, it like deals damage or something to your opponent based around that. I don't exactly remember the text on it verbatim either, but it's a cool card.
Oh, this Archaic is kind of cool. Colorless card, but is sort of cool. He's sort of like a bigger and dumber Murktide Regent or Tolarian Terror. It's a mythic 10 mana 7/7, but costs 1 less for each instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. So he, is twice as hard to get your graveyard loaded for, but is potentially free. And then when he attacks, he casts an instant or sorcery from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. That's pretty good. It's a matter of how hard it is
To get to 10.
Get to 10, and honestly, I don't really know. I know that getting to 5 is much easier than you think. I imagine getting to 10 is harder than you think based on how hard getting to 5 is.
I think it's going to be really hard in like post sideboard, especially after the sideboard. Like the opportunity to get 10 cards in your graveyard that are instants and sorceries is pretty difficult.
That's true. Sometimes you'll catch people sleeping and get to 6 and get an Oculus down before they pop their
Graveyard hate.
I've committed that sort of fuck up against Phoenix, trying to get greedy and tag more things and ended up letting them cruise. But 10 is more than 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Again, math wizard set. So I think this thing is probably not as good as the dream looks, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
And it's not really like what you do in those decks right now anyway, as like the heavy Spellamentalist decks are trying to bounce
This is
stuff.
also not an elemental itself, although it doesn't really care if you bounce it if it's fully turned on. It doesn't turn on Sunderflock and has Avatar, which is an actively
negative
anti-synergy type, because you can't pick it up with Baelmerk.
You also don't want to Baelmerk a bunch of instants and sorceries and not be able to take anything.
That's also true, yes. Yeah, kind of a weird card. Kind of
Cool, though, in nature, yeah.
As colorless cards go, this one's kind of cool. But, the slow lands are back in enemy colors. Those are the colors that we still have fast lands for. So, weird and unbalanced. Standard mana base. What else is new? Petrified Hamlet is actually probably pretty good.
That might be something in Cube even, right? Like, stop Caracas.
Yeah, when it enters, choose a land card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. It turns those into colorless lands, and it itself is a colorless land. So it is a triggered ability, so you can't just play this and name a fetch land before they have the chance to crack it. You can name a fetch land, and then that land is just a colorless land if it's in there. If their hand is...
Like, if you're on the play, you Thoughtseize them, see which fetches they have.
If you Thoughtseize them, you do not have a land drop, but...
No. But yeah, then on turn 2, you would know what's in their hand, and you could plop this down and maybe stop their fetch.
2 polluted deltas, and you're probably having a pretty good time. Yeah.
We don't have Gitaxian Probe legal because it's busted.
But yeah, stops Caracas, can stop Thespian Stage, can stop a number of things. Can't stop Nykthos. can't stop
Cradle or any of those busted lands, yeah.
any of the broken lands.
But like Library of Alexandria, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you can crop rot for it in Legacy or Timeless, and it'll probably be worth it as a one-of in some of those decks if the colorless part isn't too
damaging.
Timeless, you might be able to actually grief them, see 2 polluted deltas, and then just play this.
Oh yeah,
play.
that's way better than my plan. Yeah, in an actual busted format, you just grief.
And
you don't need a Gitaxian Probe. You get to anyway.
I don't actually know how good that's going to be, because I sort of never liked Strip Mine
in those decks anyway.
Or in the version of Scam that I played while it was legal, because it felt like pinching on mana and was not what I was trying to do. I was trying to get them to flood. I wanted them to run out of stuff to do with their mana. That's what Grief is good at and good for. But there certainly were versions of Grief decks that did play Strip Mine and did also pursue mana denial strategies, and I don't know if like lands decks play Grief, but they probably would play this, and that might make them better Grief decks as well. Hard to say. But I think this card is good. It's another one where I would have to be a little more in the lab with the sort of decks that I'm talking about to know how good I think it's going to be.
It would be okay against Urza Saga if that were legal.
Oh, yes, activated abilities. So
you can't like make the constructs, which is pretty big plan for a lot of Urza's Saga strategies.
Yeah, it's not like the moon effects, which are kind of weird with Urza's Saga now, but yeah. There's kind of a weird manland. It's sort of similar to Soulstone Sanctuary, Great Hall of the Biblioplex. It taps for colorless or a City of Brass for instants and sorceries. And then when it's not a creature, you can spend 5 to turn it into a 2/4 wizard with half prowess that's still a land. So if wizard typing is the one that you specifically cared about with your Soulstone Sanctuary, and or if like fixing for weird colors of spells, and or if the prowess part made it much more likely that you were going to be able to kill with this manland, I could see it. I don't think it's going to set the world afire, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, at least it lets you cast your Flame of Anor or whatever, and then if you need a time to pay 5, bring it to life and win the game. That's possible as well if you're against control or something. Alrighty. Well, sorry if we were a bummer about a lot of these cards, or if I was a bummer about a lot of these cards. I do like some of them, but you know, I am skeptical about a lot of their playability. I think that Turtles had maybe some better cards even than this set does, but that's okay. You know, we will catch you guys in the next one. Like, comment, subscribe.